This is a video I've been waiting some time to do. See, I recently got a golem in order to go ratting in C5J space systems, but then we got the notes that Viridian was going to be massively updating all of the graphics of things like missiles and the Bastion modes. As such, I've kind of had to wait until Viridian launched in order to showcase this one, but at long last, I've been able to run it through a couple of C5 anomalies, get some footage, and showcase what I really enjoy doing. This is such an intense way of making ISK. The thrill of knowing that someone could jump in on you at any moment and there is very little you can do about it, coupled with the fact that this can make a severe amount of ISK, much more than you can make in something like a C3. It's absolutely intoxicating, and it really exemplifies everything that I love about living in wormholes. That high risk, high reward gameplay that just gets the blood pounding. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome back to another video for EVE Online. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Golem, which is the Caldari Tech 2 Marauder battleship. Now, Marauders are really cool battleships. On paper they don't necessarily look like much, but they do have the capability of fitting what is called a Bastion module, and that wonderful piece of kit will literally double the tank and double the DPS of the ship whilst it's active. The downside, of course, being that you are pretty much anchored in place and you ain't going nowhere until that Bastion deactivates, which does increase the stakes and the risks involved in flying one of these. Now, ultimately, these did get an update recently, but the Golem was pretty much untouched in the Viridian patch notes, other than getting a rather significant increase to its mass, which does mean you have to be careful when you're jumping wormholes, especially those that are already destabilized, or it could collapse behind you. But again, we'll talk all about that in the fitting section. So I'm going to be running this through a core Garrison site, a Class 5J space combat site, and then we're going to do the the Drifter battleship Escalation at the end of it in the same ship, just with a quick refit with a mobile depot. We're going to run through all of that fit, all of that tactic, and I will showcase it in action at the end. If you do enjoy this video, please let me know. Take that brief second just to hit like on it, drop a comment down below, and subscribe if you want more EVE Online content. If you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel and keep me making content like this, head across to my Patreon page, my PayPal tip jar, or my Redbubble merchandise store. And if you need a little bit of extra help in EVE, first of all, I've got a referral link down below that can get you 1 million free skill points, even on long existing accounts. Do try that if you haven't used a referral code already. Come join the Cat's Discord, where we can chat and talk all things EVE Online, and I do monthly giveaways there for things like weekend packs and super rare skins. All that said and done then, let's jump right into talking about the Caldari Golem Tech 2 Marauder battleship. Looking at a Marauder purely from a statistical stance is going to be a little bit misleading. These ships have more to them than meets the eye, thanks to that Bastion module, and we will talk about that later on. First of all though, let's take a brief look at the traits and attributes for the Golem, just to get a feel for what this ship does and give an idea to why you might want to choose this particular variant. Now, it's worth noting that as we go through the skills here, I'm going to come back to the Marauder skill later because there's more I want to talk about. Caldari Battleship 5 is actually required to even undock the Golem, therefore you will have these maxed to begin with. Now, that's going to give you a 50% bonus to cruise missile and torpedo maximum velocity, or range, and a 5% bonus to cruise missile and torpedo explosion velocity, so 25% bonus there. This essentially helps you apply damage to faster moving targets, and that's really useful against the Drifter battleship. And arguably the Golem is actually the better of the 4 Marauders for going up against the Drifter battleship Escalation. It does struggle a little bit more on the actual core site itself. It's a bit slower than, say, the Varga or the Paladin would be, but against the Drifter, it is absolutely the top version of the Marauders to use for that. In fact, I do know some people who will fly one ship in and do the standard site itself, like a Paladin or a Varga. They'll then warp off to the next core garrison to go and clear that, whilst the Golem comes in and handles the Drifter. By the time the Golem takes the Drifter down, the Varga should have cleared the next core garrison, and then the Golem can move into the second one, and so on. You just kind of keep leapfrogging like that, which is one way you can do this. But I'm going to be showcasing this as a solo run. Now we do also have roll bonuses here on the Golem, 100% bonus to heavy missile, cruise missile and torpedo damage, really nice. We've got 4 launcher hardpoints on this ship, that means that those are essentially acting as if they were 8 hardpoint launchers, really nice. 100% bonus to tractor beam range and velocity if you want to be bringing stuff in, but quite frankly, I'd rather just use an MTU. 70% reduction in micro jump drive reactivation delay can be useful, it's an interesting point to consider. In so much as, I don't know. Some people do like to use a micro jump drive to warp around the site a little bit faster. I honestly think that you can just kind of park the Golem and just do what you need to do. I'd rather use that mid slot for something else, but again, that's going to be a personal preference. We then get 100% bonus to shield extender hit points and 50% bonus to armor plate hit points. Can't imagine you'd ever really want to put an armor plate on a Golem, but there we go. Shield extenders, yeah, maybe is the kind of thing you might want in your fit. Not what I'm going to be running in this one, but again, we'll showcase that in the fitting section. But it is nice that if you were to put a shield extender on, it's going to be doubly as effective. Finally, a 5% additional bonus to reinforced bulkhead hit points. Again, I just see very little use in that bit directly. Now let's talk about the Marauder skill. Now Marauders I've currently got trained up to 5 because I want to be flying these pretty aggressively. That said, 5 is a very long train. Even on an Omega account, it's like 50 days just for Marauder 5. Marauder 1 through 4 is sufficient. You will survive with Marauder 1 through 4, no problem. So if you do decide to stop at Marauder 4, you'll be okay. Go to 5 if it's something that you really want to train and you've kind of run out of anything else useful. It is nice though, don't get me wrong, 7.5% bonus to shield booster amount. At Marauder 4, that's 30% additional shield booster. At Marauder 5, that's 37.5. It's a notable increase, but you are going to be strong enough with just Marauder 4 using the fit that I showcase. Finally, a 10% bonus there to target painter effectiveness. Again, 40% if you're at Marauder 4 is nothing to be sniffed at, but a full 50%, it's just that little bit nicer, and it's going to help you clear the sites faster by helping your torpedoes apply their damage better. Now, all of that said then, let's talk about the fit. So this is the first part of the fit. We're going to be showcasing 2 sections here. First of all, I'm going to be showcasing the fit that we use for the actual core garrison, that is clearing the site of sleepers and the multiple waves. Once we've cleared the last reinforcement wave, we drop our mobile depot, we swap the fit so that we can then go into the drifter battleship fit, which I'll showcase in a moment, and then you attack the drifter battleship and engage in that fight. So the first part here is just the core garrison fit. There are going to be a lot of crossovers though, so I'll basically showcase this fit and explain it all, and then explain what changes between. First of all then, the high slots. Of course we have the Bastion module. We need to spend a brief moment talking about this bad boy. This is essentially a special module that can only be fit to Marauders. Essentially what you're looking at here is a module that you can activate that will double your tank, double your DPS, and increase your range, but at the expense of locking you in position. Now, it used to be as well that having Bastion activated would give you some electronic warfare resistances. That is no longer the case. It also has a 60-second activation time. Once it has been activated, even if you immediately deactivate it, you're going to have to wait 60 seconds before it drops off. When it drops off, you can then start to warp away, but that could be a whole 60-second delay, right? That's not a fun thing. And during that then warp off, you don't have the bonuses from Bastion. So this is a very interesting module, and I really enjoy this. It's also worth noting that as long as the Bastion module is active, your weapons timer is refreshing. So it's only once the Bastion module turns off and actually deactivates that your weapons timer will now stop at 60 seconds and then count down. Just worth mentioning. So, the high slots for this particular fit, other than the Bastion module, we have gone for Torpedo Launcher 2s, we're using Inferno Rage, I've also got Mjolnir Rage, and I've got Inferno and Mjolnir Javelin as well. Those are basically all that we need. Just stick with Inferno and stick with Mjolnir. Essentially, the sleepers have Omni resists, so it doesn't matter what you hit them with, it's about the range. Javelin and Rage for different range profiles. And then the Drifter, once you're fighting the Drifter, you're using Thermal, so the Inferno, against its shields, and then you swap to Mjolnir in order to take it through armor because of its resist holds. That's why we're carrying those two. I'm using torpedoes because with the skills I have, we have sufficient range using the javelins. Javelins for me go up to 77 kilometers, and that is kind of the magic number. If you warp to 0 on a core garrison, drift forward about 6 kilometers first, so drop your MTU and drift 6k away, and I'll explain why that's vital later. Essentially, if you then park up and go into Bastion mode, every single wave should spawn within that 77 kilometer range. As long as you move from the MTU towards the structures in the core Bastion, everything will be in range of your javelins. Anyway, let's activate the simulation here so you can actually see that effect there. You see 43 kilometers up from what it was before, and look at that DPS. 2,423.9 DPS with the skills I currently have, and those are not maxed skills. Other high slots though, we've got 2 Imperial Navy large EMP smart bombs, 7.5 kilometer range, doing 375 electromagnetic damage. The purpose of this essentially is that as the frigates come at you, they're going to get within 7.5 kilometers. You can then activate these 2 smart bombs and just blap those off the grid without even having to lock onto them, which is really, really powerful. Final high slot, Corpum A-Type Medium Energy Nosferatu. This just helps us keep up our capacitor stability. Wait for one of the cruisers to come in range, start orbiting anywhere within 25 kilometers, preferably to the 17 or 15, which they do, and then start leeching from there. Nice and straightforward. The mid slots here, the ones that are going to stay the same are the Pitham X-Type extra large shield booster, the multi-spectrum shield hardener Pitham C-Type, we've got a cap recharger 2, we've got an Imperial Navy cap recharger, and then we've got 2 Republic Fleet large cap batteries. There is a lot of neutralization goes on in a core garrison. We need to have as much capacitor stability as possible. We're actually going to have to refit for more of it later on, but again, we'll get to that in a moment when we talk about the Drifter refit. For the low slots, more capacitor stability with 2 capacitor flux coils 2s, followed by Caldari Navy ballistic control systems for additional DPS. Now, I was given some True Sancha, I forget what they're called now, power manifolds or whatever they are. I tried them out, it didn't really work for me. I massively prefer the capacitor flux coils on this. That just works to help keep your capacitor nice and charged. It reduces your total capacitor but increases the recharge rate, which helps with resistance against neuting. Finally then, the rigs, a large capacitor control circuit 2, large capacitor control circuit 2. It's all about that cap stability, which as you can see under optimal conditions here, 49.9%, delta of 5.2 gigajoules per second, which is 17.1%. It's pretty nice, it's good, it's cap stable, it's one of the advantages of the Golem. Worth spending a brief moment to talk about drones. I do have 3 flights of drones in here, all of which are light drones. I've got Hobgoblins, Warriors, and Acolytes. Again, you'll notice that we've got the Hobgoblins there in order to help with the Drifter, because we're going to be using the thermal going through its shield. Then you swap to Acolytes to swap to EM damage to give a little bit of extra going through the armor. It's only 89 DPS, but every little helps. The Warriors are in there just in case any of the frigates that we're fighting in the core Bastion itself do have any issues. Last bit to talk about on this fit then is of course the Republic Fleet Target Painter. It's got an optimal range of 50 kilometers, a full range up to 175, which is pretty awesome, and it increases their signature radius by 59%. It is actually worth training into the skills that make the Target Painters even better, because the Golem, obviously, we're going up against some ships, we do want to have that whole ability to like make the target signature radius as big as possible in order to deal as much damage as we can. Anyway, so that's the core garrison fit. Let's have a look at the Drifter battleship refit. Now, the Drifter battleship is a little bit of an unusual thing to come up against. Essentially, as you go through the final reinforcement wave of the core garrison, a structure will appear. And if you shoot that structure, any damage to it will trigger the spawning of a Drifter response battleship. And this thing is nasty. It does a lot of DPS, it does an incredible amount of neutralization, and it is astonishingly fast for a battleship. It also has this annoying propensity for warping away from you, which is why you need to get essentially either 4 points of warp scram onto it, so bring a friend in a frigate who can tackle it, or what I like to do is bring a mobile medium warp disruptor 2 and just anchor that and activate it when that Drifter gets in range, and that will hold it in position nicely. Anyway, so the refit here, you'll notice that most of this fit is exactly the same, which is what I really like about the Golem. We don't need to do any major refit using that mobile depot between the final wave and the drifter battleship. In fact, all we've actually done is swapped a couple of the high slots around, so the 2 Imperial Navy EMP smart bombs have been swapped out for a True Sancha heavy energy Nosferatu and a medium energy Nosferatu 2, just to again help with that cap stability, yo, and with the mid slots, because we don't need the target painter anymore, that's been swapped out for a public fleet large cap battery. All about that capacitor, because again, you'll see in the combat demonstration just how nasty that battleship's neutralization is. Other than that though, it's basically what we've been looking at. You're flying it the same way you park, you keep Bastion mode on, you just keep everything running, add all your Nosferatus to the target and just hammer away at it. This is when the drones do come in useful, and for just that little bit of extra DPS, you can see it pushes us up to 2,330.1 DPS. Woo. It's a nice number. I like big numbers like this. But anyway, let's showcase this in action then, flying in a core garrison. So here we are, warping the Golem into a core garrison. Now you'll notice, compared to some of the C3 sites that I've been showcasing, there's a lot more going on here. Now, I do make a mistake, actually I make several mistakes in this particular anomaly. The first one is that you should be dropping your pack rat mobile tractor unit straight away. You should then be moving towards those structures in the distance, about 5 kilometers. You need to be more than 5 Ks away from your tractor unit before you activate Bastion mode. Now in this case, I don't do that. I just kind of drop the mobile tractor unit with Bastion mode active, I'm parked next to it, and that will come back and bite me in the butt cheeks later on. You'll notice that I don't bother to start locking onto any of the frigates, because we simply don't need to. And at this point, I've got the javelins fitted, so I've got 77 kilometer range. You can see everything in this site is within that 77 kilometers. I'm looking at my overview on the right-hand side as well. I'm waiting for the moment that every ship in all of those frigates are within about 7.5 kilometers. Then I'll start activating the smart bombs. You might also look at my armor currently and think, hang on, how did you take armor damage on a golem? That's simply because I tried to run a core stronghold before this as well, and that doesn't quite work. I do make a lot of mistakes later on, but the basic premise here is to kill off those sentry guns nice and quickly, use your target painter, use javelins, because obviously they're not going to get closer, you are just going to have to blap them, and use the smart bombs. As you can see, those are cycling now. We're going to get another blast in a second. There it goes. This will be dealing with all of those frigates. They've got 7.5 kilometer radius, so all of those frigates that are 6,600 meters away are getting hit. I don't need to lock onto them to see how much damage they're taking for this particular run. I'm just going to keep blasting until they all disappear from my overview, whilst shooting at those Orthrus sentry turrets in the distance. Then we'll start working on the Awakened Sentinels one by one with Rage torpedoes. I've, of course, forgotten to bookmark my tractor unit, so we're going to do that now. I'm running a pack rat for this, but ultimately a standard MTU is going to be good enough. Anyone who says, oh, but yeah, you know, they're easy to scan, it's like, hi, I'm in a golem. It's not like the tractor unit is what they're going to be scanning down here. You can see now the Emergent Sentinels, those frigates, there's only one left. Next pulse should probably take that out. There we are, that's now gone, so I can deactivate both of my smart bombs just to save on capacitor a little bit. That Orthrus is nearly done as well. I've just obviously had to reload my javelins. We're going to finish that one off and move on to the next one. It's at this point I should point out I am loving the new Bastion mode graphics that came with the Viridian update. They look so pretty. I am slightly disappointed that the Halcyon Dawn skin is not one of the ones that gets the special Bastion mode that sort of colour matches to it. Like in the video they showcased, I'm not entirely sure which one it is, it might be a Rata Sunset or something, it's a red skin. And when they activate the Bastion mode, this beautiful red glow comes off it. But at the same token, it still looks gorgeous, and I love the new lights and all of that effect. Even with the yellow and the blue actually goes together surprisingly well in my opinion. I like it. Point that I haven't mentioned as well, you'll notice that I have one of the Awakened Sentinels being Nosferatu'd at the moment. That is just, you pick one of them that's orbiting within the 17Ks as quickly as possible, get that Nos up and running to keep your capacitor nice and steady, and then kind of ignore that one. destroy all the other ones first. Anyway, this is going to take a while. It does take a while to get through those Orthruses to start with. Then you swap to your Rage torpedoes to go through the Awakened Sentinels. Things go a lot faster from that point. We're coming now to the end of the first wave here. It's just the Awakened Sentinel left, the one that I was Nosferatuing. That is the final trigger for this. But I thought this was a nice opportunity for me to just get some screenshots, which is why you'll see the screen staggers every now and then like it just did. That's me hitting the screenshot button and the game fixing the screen to allow for that. But look at the Bastion mode. Look at how pretty that now looks. And those Inferno torpedoes as well. The new blasts they've added in the Viridian update. I just love the look of that. It looks so incredible, and you will get to see the Mjolnir ones later on. Now, the second wave is a lot more interesting, shall we say. You have to really be careful with this one, and I've heard a lot of people say, oh, don't use the smart bombs. And honestly, I think it's folly to not use the smart bombs. You just need to be, well, smart about how you use them. What am I hinting at here? Well, basically, the trigger for this wave, the trigger for wave 3, is the Emergent Keepers. Those are the frigates. There are 6 of them. If they all die, that is when wave 3 spawns. And I really don't want wave 3 to spawn with 3 Sleepless Sentinel battleships still on grid, and then have wave 3 spawn on top of that. So I need to be careful. Fortunately, those Emergent Keepers are also remote rep ships. So you'll see, this time around, I have locked all of the different frigates so that you can see their different armor values and their structure values going up and down. This allows me to just keep an eye on what is happening here. You can see that as we move through, those smart bombs are doing their job. They are quite comfortably ripping through those Emergent Keepers. The Sleepless Sentinel in the distance, though, that one I'm hitting now with javelins. I should swap to rages at this point, but I'm very slow to do so now that they're in rage range. That does speed the fight up. But again, I fly these things sort of, for a short period of time. I don't learn them as well as you guys will. Once you start to understand the ship a bit better, you remember to do like the rage torpedoes and swapping for javelins and things like that faster. You're going to do these sights better than I do. I'm showcasing it with a noob running it so that if you are dedicated to this ship, you know you're going to do better than I am, right? Anyway, we're going to get a couple more pulses now. I'm looking at those healths. There we are, do a quick pulse. And now we can see I've taken it down to 2 Emergent Keepers left. This means, essentially, I just need to kill one of those and then leave the other one alive. I could leave both of them running, but they do have neutralizers on them, which are affecting my capacitor. So I'd rather quickly send my drones out, take one of those Emergent Keepers down, and then immediately start spamming to bring those drones back to me, because I don't want them to be taking out that Emergent Keeper. And the Emergent Keeper will eventually aggress those drones because it's a sleeper frigate, and sleeper frigates tend to go for drones as sort of a priority, cruisers less so, and battleships barely even touch the drones. But I don't want to kill that Emergent Keeper, and I don't want my drones dying just yet. So now I can focus on the battleships. Once the battleships are done, couple of smart bomb cycles, and we will take out that Emergent Keeper. Coming now to the end of Wave 2, you can see those Inferno rockets doing their thing in the distance there. Time to reload those. The smart bomb should be enough to finish this off. Boom, down it goes. There's that last Emergent Keeper. Now, Wave 3 is 5 Awakened Sentinel Cruisers. These are Webbers. 3 Awakened Keepers, which are Webbers, Scrammers, and Newts. And 3 Sleepless Sentinels, which are battleships that are Webbers, Scrammers, and Newts as well. Therefore, the Awakened Keepers are kind of our priority here, because they're cruisers, they go down quickly, they web, scram, and newt. We want to get rid of those to reduce the amount of scram that we're taking, the amount of web that we're taking. Not that the webs matter at all, really, but it's the newts and the scrams. Ideally, you don't want to have too many scrams on you in case you need to warp off. Not that you really get a chance to in Bastion, though, I guess. So what am I saying? No, it's the newts. The newts are what I really care about here. Getting rid of the 3 Awakened Keepers quickly is going to reduce the amount of newts that are on me. Then focusing on the Sleepless Sentinels, keep getting rid of 2 of those, because the 3rd one will be the trigger for Wave 4. And again, I really don't want to trigger Wave 4 with a load of Awakened Sentinels still on grid with me. Then we will work on the Awakened Sentinels and then the Sleepless Sentinel at the end. Not really much to say at this point, it is just kind of auto-running itself. You descan to the best of your ability. I do have friends nearby, I've got a couple of stealth bombers hiding around nearby in case anyone tries to tackle me or have some fun there. I've got other ships in the connecting wormhole across from us, so I'm feeling quite comfortable to run this site. Because remember, Bastion mode, 60-second activation time, and as long as the Bastion mode is on, I cannot warp, I cannot move, I cannot do anything. I am stuck here. Someone drops a fleet on me, best I can do is try and shoot them back, which, you know, not ideal in a PvE battleship, but there we go. It's a Marauder, it does what it does fairly well. Anyway, we're going to skip ahead on this one because this is a long wave, there's a lot of stuff going on, and none of it's overly interesting. Some nice missile graphics hitting me there, but let's move on. If you're paying attention to the overview in the top right, you'll have noticed that a decloak transmission beacon has now arrived in system as well. This, well, not arrived, it's just, you know, decloaked. Do not shoot that. That is what is going to spawn the Drifter battleship later on. We've got one final wave to deal with. Unfortunately, this wave is actually not that bad at all. We've got some Emergent Wardens, we've got some Awakened Sentinels, and we've got a Sleepless Keeper. There's no triggers here, obviously. We are the final wave. Those Emergent Wardens are going to be a bit of a problem because they web, they scram, and they newt. Again, the webs we don't care about, but the newts we do. We're just going to kind of take all of this out one bit by one bit, and those Emergent Wardens, again, being emergents, will eventually come into range. They orbit around about the 5 kilometer mark. Usually means they actually orbit around sort of 7.5, but again, it's within smart bomb range. I don't know why I'm trying to shoot one of those right now, but it is what it is. I'll, you know, correct that issue in just a moment, and we'll move on to trying to shoot the cruisers and eventually those battleships. You'll notice the Sleepless Keepers annoyingly have spawned outside of javelin range. Obviously 77 kilometers is what I have. They're sitting at 81, but they will get closer. This just essentially does the target priority for us nicely. It means we can start shooting the cruisers and the frigates with the smart bombs whilst those battleships come into range. Anyway, once those are done, however, we can now use the mobile depot in order to refit our modules ready for the Drifter battleship. This essentially just means taking out those Imperial Navy large EMP smart bombs and dropping in the 2 Nosferatus we have, losing the target painter, and swapping in the next cap battery. Now, when you're going up against the Sleeper, the Drifter, sorry, this thing is going to be getting right up in your grill nice and quickly. You'll see I've actually made a massive mistake here. I parked myself next to the mobile tractor unit, which means all of these wrecks are now in position right next to me. I cannot drop the mobile medium warp disruptor 2. I'll try to do that now and try to anchor it, and it is not going to work because I'm within 5 kilometers of all of these wrecks and everything else. Huge mistake. That costs me big time because I then need to deactivate Bastion mode and start to fly away, and when I realise that's not going to work because it puts me down to half hull, as you'll see in a moment, I actually have to start using my drones to shoot all of the wrecks away in order to get the medium mobile warp disruptor 2 up. So again, at the start of the fight, the first thing you should be doing is dropping that mobile tractor unit, drifting towards the structure to be 5 to 6 Ks away from the MTU so that you can do all of this stuff later. It's a big mistake for me, it costs me dearly, it nearly loses my ship, so make sure you do not make the same mistake as I do. Anyway, let's skip ahead on this one because there's a lot of just not much going on while I try to rectify the problems. You can see here, me trying to launch it and being told, no, I can't do that. Big issues, but we're going to skip ahead. You don't want to see me have to kill all of these wrecks. Whilst I'm doing that, though, I am just leaving the missiles running against the Arithmos Tyrannos there in order just to hit it for as much as possible. We're using thermal against the shields. We then use EM against the armor, which seems counterintuitive, but it works, and that's the best way to do it. Anyway, let's skip ahead. Finally, I have cleared all of the wrecks away. You can see I've managed to drift a little bit further from where I was. That's allowed me to go back into Bastion mode. But in having to turn Bastion mode off and sort of drift away from everything in order to be able to drop the medium mobile warp disruptor 2, essentially I lost half of my armor, and that is kind of scary. You really don't want to have to do that. Learn from my mistake. But you can see that there, top of the screen, just about to orbit overhead. well, me moving past the camera, twisting at least, that is the mobile warp disruptor. That is currently anchoring. That will go online in a moment. You'll get the nice big badoof of the bubble appearing to hold that in place. And we need that. We need that because otherwise that Arithmos Tyrannos will flee this combat site, and that's just awful. You'd get no loot at all. You really, really don't want that. But hey. So we're just going to keep shooting at this now. We're using the EM Mjolnir Rage rockets, and you can see those have got really cool sort of electromagnetic effects there as well. Again, I am loving the visual updates here as part of Viridian. Those missiles just look incredible. I love the thermal. I love the Mjolnir. Even the Scourge ones, that sort of greenish, tingy gas cloud that sort of blasts off them. They are visually identifiable now, and they just look incredible. Anyway, so I'm going to skip ahead because now, again, this is just literally descan and hope no one jumps in on me whilst ramming every torpedo I have into the side of that Arithmos Tyrannos. You can see now that the mobile warp disruption bubble is up, which means the Arithmos Tyrannos is not warping away, and it's about to get destroyed. Look at those Mjolnirs, they just look so cool. Tried to zoom in to get the explosion, but the ship being destroyed's moved it away. We're just going to have to watch from here because this is such a pretty explosion. Like, check this out. Look at that. How amazing is that? Beautiful explosion. Followed by my next big error. Whilst I'm, now trying to go, okay, well, I need to warp out. How do I do that? Can I unanchor the thing? I need to pick up the loot because I had to destroy my mobile tractor unit earlier. That's a bit far away. I do the idiotic thing of trying to warp to, trying to drift to the response battleship here. As I try drifting, I'm sitting there and I, now go to try and unanchor things. I want to showcase some graphics, but basically that is the site now done. You unanchor that mobile medium warp disruptor, grab whatever loot you need from like your mobile tractor unit, grab it all, fly away. Big ISK for a site like this. Lot of stuff going on. Again, you don't even necessarily need to do the refit that I've done. You can have one person go in with a ship purely for the core garrison, and then before they warp out, the drifter battleship warps in. So like this golem with the fit I'm currently running warps in. Then the first Marauder warps to the next core garrison and starts to clear that, whilst the Golem then goes and clears the Drifter battleship, spawns it and clears it. Then they warp into the next site and they trigger that Drifter, whilst the first Marauder warps out to the third core garrison. You kind of do that staggered effect, so one of them runs the site and the other one runs the Drifter response. Make sure that the battleship that you want to do the Drifter is in sight, on site, on grid, before the first one warps away. Because if you warp out of one of these sites and there are no rats left, you've killed all the sleepers, and you warp out of that site and there's no friendly ship inside, then the decloaked transmission relay will despawn and you cannot attack the sleeper, the drifter. So you do need to, do that first. Anyway, that about runs things out for the end of this video. Hopefully that's given you some inspiration, showcased this fit, showcased how beautiful the new Viridian graphics are. Like, genuinely, I am so impressed with that. I really like how this all looks and how it's running. I'm going to be running some more of these C5s. I've got a Varga. Obviously, there's been some big changes to the Varga and how that works. If you're wondering what I'm doing on screen now, it's again because I was an idiot and I realised that I've come too far away from the mobile warp disruption to pick it up and loot it. So instead I decided, screw it, I'm just going to shoot it, and then realised it's got a lot of health. I should have just drifted towards it and tried to, unanchor it and scoop it there. But hey, sometimes we do silly things at 1 o'clock in the morning while trying to run anomalies like this for content. So yeah. Forgive me being a noob. It's a learning process, right? And I make these mistakes so that I can teach you not to make them. Ultimately, all I need to do was be within 5 kilometers of the mobile medium warp disruptor, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to showcase the thermal rockets again, because look at them. Look at them, they're so pretty. They're so pretty. And then friend with a manticore comes in and starts using the Scourge ones. So actually, let's show you the Scourge ones just before we end this video. You can see the Inferno torpedoes there, then the Scourge ones come in with that sort of greeny, swampy gas effect. I love it. I love it. Anyway, folks, that's a core garrison, including the Drifter Response battleship, in a Class 5 wormhole. Hopefully that's given you some inspiration. Let me know in the comment section down below what you want to see for future videos, so on and so forth. Otherwise, thank you for watching this one right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!